Welcome back to Market on Close. Time now for Options Corner, and today we're focusing on CoreWeave. Shares are down almost 2% on the day, but was upgraded over its Citizens JMP to outperform with a $180 price target. With more, let's send things over to Marley Caden back over in Chicago.
Thanks so much, Sam. I'm here with Rick Ducat, our lead market technician, joining us, of course, today to break down CoreWeave and take a look at some of the charts. Before we dive straight into CoreWeave, though, Rick, can we just take a look sort of more broadly at the sector itself and how it's performing sort of in relation to CoreWeave? Because I think that perspective is always important.
As I often say, tech is a sector of winners and losers. CoreWeave is obviously a winner in this case, up almost 200% since its IPO in March here, versus 32 and 18% roughly for the tech sector and the S&P. But, the JMP Securities upgrade news today was notable, but really it's behind that is the $6.3 billion contract with NVIDIA. Just comparing these two, there's not many symbols that can make NVIDIA look like a blip like this, so kind of an interesting food for thought there to consider. But so CoreWeave, cloud infrastructure provider, storage, networking services, servers, CPU and GPU access, which means you can rent computer power for specific workloads without maintaining the hardware. So that's kind of what CoreWeave does. A lot of AI stuff, and we can also see they had an OpenAI contract for $11.9 billion before their IPO in March. But these big contracts, they can be a double-edged sword. Big money, but what happens if that ends and they don't renew? That's exactly what Seaport Research said in their note recently. The focus on large customers is their greatest risk here. They initiated coverage yesterday with a neutral rating. We did see some other analyst moves. JMP Securities, as you said, Raymond James, Cantor Fitzgerald, positive. But the really big one that caught my eye, Kerrisdale Capital, short position here. Lots of very harsh words. They labeled it a debt-fueled GPU rental business with no moat, the poster child of the AI infrastructure bubble, and that their explosive growth is based on hype rather than innovation, no proprietary tech, no defensible IP, etc. It kind of just keeps going. Kind of remind me of DocuSign. We had this big spike, COVID, big enthusiasm, everything kind of deflated. A lot of the very same things that were being said about CoreWeave here, I remember from DocuSign.
And it's interesting, a different type of company, but very similar in that there are already longevity concerns about the business model here. I've read those same notes that you're referencing there. But as we take a look at CoreWeave in terms of the options action here, especially that we've had those major headlines coming out. You mentioned OpenAI, of course, NVIDIA agreeing to buy all of its unused cloud computing, which did then bolster its business model a bit in terms of somewhat analyst coverage said. As far as the, options trading is looking and the technicals are showing us, what are they indicating?
The trend is down since we had that high point near 187. You could draw this channel type shape here connecting these highs. That's about where we topped out today, is that same level here near that 120 mark. The day is not over yet. We got a little time left still, but it would be a bit discouraging for the bulls if we started to falter and retreat here. The 103 level, low point here, high point here, low point here once again. That seems like a notable short-term supportive area to keep an eye on here. RSI, a bit of a fake out here. Breakout above the longer-term trend line here, price not really following suit. So a bit of a mismatch there. If we were to look a little bit further here and add our other studies, volume profile, standard deviation channels, we can see that there are nodes right here at these shaded areas here, right around 115 and around 100 or so is where that's centered around to the downside. Quite a bit of support in that area to watch out for if we were to move lower. Options market also pricing in a plus minus 21.7 move for October. That's our purple shaded area here representing that expected move for that series. Lines up pretty closely with that low point we were discussing just below the 95 level. That's where things would really start to trail off.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's trading, just below the 119 level. So, interesting to note the range is that wide for this one. As far as any activity that you saw or notable activity, calls to puts or any notable trades that you noticed on CoreWeave?
Yeah, overall, overwhelmingly calls today. About 81% calls. The total options volume, about 284,000 contracts traded here. Couple big trades. The first one really stood out. It came in around 130. Not 100% sure if it's all the same person, but during the span of 10 minutes, someone bought over 19,000 September 19th 115 calls at a 611 average debit. That's about an $11 million trade here. Very short-term trade, 3 days to expiration. Need a break even of 121.11 to get above the profitable territory here. So very risky, very short term. Another one, minus 1,150 November 21st, 100 strike puts at a 946 credit. A little guy compared to the other trade, $1 million worth of short puts being sold here. Quite a cushion, though. Would need a 23% move to the downside to break even.
All right, yeah, so two very, very different trades there. Thank you for finding those for us, Rick, and thanks for talking CoreWeave and also noticing similarities between DocuSign, because I love when we can draw some correlation to companies we're familiar with and their moves there. But with that said, thanks to Rick Ducat.